Hello, I'm Steven Byess, Music Director of Orchestra Nova Northwest, and I am delighted to welcome as my guest today composer Karena Ingram. Welcome, Karena.
Thank you so much, Stephen, for that warm welcome.
We are presenting a new work that you've written titled Rain on November 15 and 16 in a West Coast premiere. And this piece is part of the Virginia Toulmin commissioning project, which is sponsored by the League of American Orchestras and the American Composers Orchestra. And we've been part of this consortium and project for a few years now, but we're particularly excited about presenting your work. It's based on a very serious topic, and I would like to invite you to tell us a little about your work and perhaps why you chose this subject, and we'll talk about the piece in just a moment.
Yeah, of course. So Rainn, spelled Rainn, so two N's, is inspired by the Rainn organization, whose acronym is the Rape, Abuse, Incest National Network. This is an organization that provides resources and support for victims of sexual violence. And when I first came across this organization, I think it was through an infographic of different statistics that I saw on social media. And this is around like 2014, maybe 2016. And they reported that back then in that infographic that every 98 seconds approximately, an American is sexually assaulted. And so that number always really resonated with me. That is such a striking and really devastating statistic to see. And so I put it in my notes app on my iPhone, thinking of like something will come of this at some point, but it's the number I really wanted to remember. And so when I was reached out by the ACO with this opportunity and I was trying to think of a work to write, I was going through because I keep a lot of my notes in my in my phone. And I found that number and I went back to the Rainn organization website to see did that number change? What is the current statistic? And in 2024, that number dropped to 68 seconds. And so that shift was so jarring to me that immediately it was a number that I wanted to revolve around this piece. And so this work kind of is a journey through the five stages of grief. And through every 68 seconds, there's a shift in music to represent that next stage. This is a journey that a lot of survivors have to endure with, a loss of autonomy, a loss of self, that grieving after something traumatic has happened. And so I really was inspired and honored for, survivors that I know in my life, survivors that I've seen stories countless of times throughout all forms of media. This journey to endure, but eventually grieving, rebuilding, and continuing on in this new restructured self.
Thank you for that. The piece is so wonderfully constructed in the episodes that come along. And you mentioned that the stages of this, beginning with a very solemn introduction, and then the stages of denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. Uh, it's easy to follow those shifts of those moments in this process. When you were writing the work, uh, can you tell us anything about the orchestration, the shift of moods that go from these sections? Because it's a rather standard orchestration of double winds and the standard brass section, strings, and percussion. So, what can you share with us about that?
Yeah, of course. I feel like in a way I kind of wrote each of these sections a bit separately and then fused everything together. I am a line writer. I really enjoy as a violinist, and so that is my main instrument. Highlighting kind of these narratives. A lot of it is throughout the winds as well, and the clarinets and the oboes, this kind of like back and forth as though it is, two beings, two entities that are in conflict with each other that resolve towards the end. So I wanted at least that through line throughout these very distinct sections, but I wanted these sections to have their own weight and sound to it so that the 68 seconds was as obvious as possible. I think it's easy to, the 68 seconds can go by so quickly. but it can also feel like a lifetime depending on what, scenario you're in. And so I wanted moments to really hold weight and be like, wow, that was 68 seconds, and have an audience member sit with that amount of time and what it means for them individually. And so each section was pretty, when I was starting to write this, was written kind of individually to have the energy of it. I wanted bargaining to really feel like a back and forth between different sections of the orchestra versus depression, which might, I think, can have like very easy and literal interpretations. For me, a depression feels very cyclic, like you're kind of almost trapped in your own Groundhog's Day loop of monotony. And so this kind of like slowing down there, or this rise back again in the winds when you have these long sustained chords in the strings at the end, for this acceptance to be not so much jovial in a way, but a calm that after experiencing the hardship of the bargaining, of the denial and the anger. So I think that's how I kind of approached it. But then having the clarinets or oboes kind of play a main character enduring this journey as well.
That is so wonderful. I love music like this, that it obviously speaks for itself and serves, if there was absolutely no narrative behind it, it's so effective because of the episodic nature of what you're writing and the dialogue that happens between the various instruments and the various sections. But having such a powerful narrative and such a crucially essential point of our social responsibility as citizens really makes this such a meaningful piece. And it's about 7 minutes in length. It is a powerfully condensed punch of musical expression. So I'm excited to do it, and I appreciate your descriptions about all this. Now, you've written a lot of symphonic works, and also some chamber works, but you've also done things like write music for video games and such. Has this project for Rainn been specifically its own symphonic type of work that you do, or do you bring in some of the other aspects of the other work that you do into this larger symphonic work?
That's a really good question. I think I try not to silo myself in those ways. I think I approach any project the same. There's some nuances that, you take away for games versus chamber versus solo versus orchestral. But I think, I don't know, pen to paper, I feel like I write just the same in any of those different genres, because it's all coming from lived experience, from my lifelong inspirations. I find a lot of inspiration from video games, from nature, from other composers, from all over the place. And so I try not to lock myself into a certain style when I'm writing for one genre or another. I think that really lends itself to flexibility in your creativity. It lets you kind of explore a little bit more in ways where sometimes things can be very strict and locked in. I feel like it allows me to be expansive in my writing. So I try not um, to lock into any style depending on the genre.
Yes, and that's such a wonderful description of yourself, of being expansive, because you do work also in collaboration with a museum near where you live, outside of or in Baltimore, which allows you, by your description, to engage just like a kaleidoscope of experiences, and to try to find a way to access them. And I think that, at least in my estimation, that comes through in your music in this also kaleidoscopic way that you draw different influences and intent with dialogue of within the orchestra. It's exciting for us, and I hope that this is just the first time that we present a work by Karena Ingram. So we're very excited about that. I appreciate you taking time for us to be with us today, and look forward to performing your work in just a couple of weeks.
Absolutely. The honor is all mine. Thank you so much for programming, Rainn. I'm so excited for Nova Northwest's performance of this piece, and helping to get this important message and the work that the Rainn organization does out to more people.
Well, thank you, Karena. We really are looking forward to this. and I'll be in touch about our performances afterwards. But thanks for being with me today.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.